We got a great show for you tonight. College football playoff week 2 rankings are out. We are going to discuss it. MLB free agency, Alex Anthopoulos, Arthur Smith, some crazy talk about Bijan Robinson being a decoy. But we are going to start off the show with Connor Stallions and the Michigan Wolverine scandal. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. So much stuff has come up and it just gets crazier by the day. And this is something that I said when it originally came out. I was like, I don't think they're getting investigated for what we know right now. I think there's just stuff that's going to keep coming out and out and out and out. And I just don't even know where to start here because frankly, I don't even know what is going on at this point. It's just every day there's a crazier story. And now Connor Stallions has been fired, but now we know he had a $500,000 house right next to Michigan's campus. And we have no idea how he earned that because he was making $50,000 a year. Obviously, the Central Michigan thing has come out since then where he's on Central Michigan sideline looking like a coach. And no one from Central Michigan knew who he was or said anything. And it was just and then we have this vacuum scandal. So not only does he have this $500,000 house, he apparently was refurbishing vacuums and selling them. And they were all outside of his apartment. He gets sued for that by the homeowners association. And he blames the Michigan State fans. I mean, and this is beyond the fact that he has a 500-page manifesto where he went to Army because that's where the best coach is. And he was going to bring Michigan back to the promised land. And you see videos with him celebrating with players and Harbaugh, yet all these players and Harbaugh say, oh, I didn't even really know who that guy was, which maybe is possible. But as more things come out, none of this makes sense. And now you also have the Big Ten, Michigan blaming the rest of the Big Ten, saying they had all their signs, so they were cheating as well. Every day, not even every day, every 4 hours, something comes out where you're just like, what is going on? What is the craziest part of this entire thing to you? And I want to preface one thing before you give me the craziest part or your favorite part, because to me, it's honestly funny. It's gotten comical. I'm not a Michigan fan. I'm not an Ohio State fan. I'm not a Big Ten fan. They could all get banned from the playoffs and I would be happy because they're boring football teams. But what's the craziest part to you? And I want to preface this. I still don't think anything happens this year because I think it's just going to be a bunch of back and forth legal things and stuff like that, threats and stuff, just so the punishment when it does come down, which there will be some sort of punishment, it seems like, is going to come up after the college football playoff, and they're going to play out the remainder of the season.
Well, if any punishment comes immediately, it'll have to be from the Big Ten, whose commissioner is in his very first year. What a wild first year to be the Big Ten commissioner. Maybe the biggest story since the turn of the century for that conference. So what a wild thing for him to have to deal with in his very first year as commissioner. I think the most wild thing ever is explaining this to somebody who has no idea what college football is, and that's just college football. This reminds me of the old, Alabama guy who's now in prison, who named his kids Crimson and Bear, who went and poisoned tumors, corners, trees. This is what that reminds me of. Whereas it has really, I find it hard to believe that Jim Harbaugh had all of this set up. I really have a hard time believing it. I mean, they're CEOs of practically Fortune 500 companies. They interact with people, so many people on a day-to-day basis that they delegate pretty much everything they have to. So I have a hard time believing Jim Harbaugh knew the minute details of what was going on. Maybe the encompassing idea of the sign stealing stuff, maybe. But generally, these guys are pretty smart. They'll protect themselves without knowledge, and they just let the lower guys handle the nitty gritty details of everything. I think it's funny, too. I think it's hilarious that this guy is just a Michigan man. I know Ohio State fans. And let's get something straight. Big Ten fans who are upset in arms, you don't have a case. Other than maybe Ohio State. Ohio State's the only team that has given Michigan a game in the past 2 years since this whole thing started. The rest of you guys never stood a chance with or without the signs. Michigan was still a good football team prior to that. I know the 2020 season was a dumpster fire, but we could chalk that up to the COVID season. But since then, I mean, Ohio State's the only one who actually has a gripe with this. I mean, Michigan had supposedly the signs and Georgia smacked them. TCU beat them. I just find it hard to believe that Purdue had an actual chance against Michigan if they had not been stealing signs. That's just not the case in Purdue fans. Everybody besides Ohio State in the Big Ten, you're kidding yourselves and you're just being whiny babies. Another thing, and I said this last time we talked about it, that this is a bunch of malarkey. Everybody at the professional levels and the college levels does this in some capacity. Whether it's done to the extent that Connor Stallions is doing it, I don't know, but every single team in the NFL, they did it before they put the mics in the head and the headset in the helmets, which I'll get to next. The NFL was trying to do this. Multiple people who have been in the front office, actual players on the teams who work for bigger and badder companies than this have admitted as such that they were doing the same thing. And you know what the NFL did to get around all this sign stealing hoopla? They put mics in the helmet. That's the easiest way to get around this. I can't believe we're sitting here in the year 2023, our Lord, and we are still signaling signs like cavemen from the sidelines. I mean, you want to get this, squash this bug, NCAA? Put communications where the coach can directly relay the play from the headset to the quarterback and quarterback to his team. I mean, that's the easiest. It's so obvious. And that's why the NCAA is a big joke, because it's a bunch of dumb people in a powerful position. But if you're waiting for the NCAA to hand down a punishment, they'll take forever. Punishment might not come until 2025. I think that the only immediate punishment that might come is the Big Ten suspending Jim Harbaugh indefinitely. That's the only thing I see. The whole Connor Stallions saga is hilarious. We'll tell our kids about this, but I have a feeling when the whole story comes out, the entire story comes out, we're going to sit here and be like, this guy was just being a madman, a Michigan man, kind of all by himself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's all by himself. I do think, there's a possibility that, people with big pockets around the Michigan organization were also part of this orchestration. We talk about boosters, we talk about that. Like, there's a possibility where Jim Harbaugh knew very little of what the extent of what's happening, but someone was paying this man hefty bucks to do it. And I think that's where you get into people outside of the program and stuff like that, because this was not happening. He was not doing this on his own. Now, I know he fell on his own sword, and really, I respect Connor Stallions. Like, he's doing what all of us fans wish we could do. Like, if we always talk about things that, like, man, if I could just help LSU do this, or somehow help LSU win a national championship, or help Georgia win a national championship, like, would you do it? Absolutely. Absolutely. If I knew that the rest of the team knew that I was part of this championship, because I obviously can't perform on the field, but if I could actually do something rather than just scream in the crowd, I would be doing it. And the way he's just fallen on his sword and everything. And I think, now that you have this Blake Corum thing coming out, where he was basically working under an LLC that was run by Connor Stallion and getting paid by it, that's where I think there's money involved in this, that when you look at what Connor Stallions was making, he didn't have that money. Like, he wasn't making that money. Now, he was getting paid by someone, and he was getting, there was other ways that this money was getting sent to players and stuff like that. I think that's the next step in this entire thing. But this entire thing, I don't even think, I said this last week, I don't think we've, even reached the tip of the iceberg. I still don't think we have. I think even more stuff is going to come out where we're just going to be blown away. And you talk about a 30 for 30 story. Like, this needs a movie. Like, we need a movie. We don't even need a 30 for 30 on this. We need an entire full-length picture film, 2.5 hours, run by a great director, showing me exactly what happened on the big screen in the theater. That's how good this story is. Like, this is the juiciest college football story of my lifetime, by far, bar none. I mean, you have a guy who literally was planned to bring Michigan since he was a kid in high school, so much so that he enlisted in the Marines because I thought it would better help him become a head coach. And he's just made this entire, which it's almost like drug dealing. A lot of people don't respect drug dealers, but it's like the fact what he was orchestrating shows you how smart this man was. Like, this guy is a borderline genius, because this is a complex orchestration to avoid being caught and bring Michigan to the level that they're at now. I mean, that's a Michigan man. I mean, that is respect. And people are going to be like, oh, I can't believe you know what? That is, and when you said it perfectly when you said this is college football, like just some stupid, crazy orchestration that you couldn't even imagine in your wildest dreams because of the obsession between that some of these people have with these schools. That is, I mean, when you talk about it just means more in the SEC, it just means more. I mean, this is the definition. That should be the title of the picture film. It just means more.
This is one of the craziest stories in sports. It's not just college football, it's sport. It's not just collegiate, it's professional. This is one of the craziest. And what's so crazy about it is developing in real time. You know, Pete Thamel's been on top of it, but he's not the only one. Every single day, a few times a day, new information comes to light. And we have everybody seems like they're a chicken with their head cut off running around. Nobody really knows the entire story. And I agree with you. We just have the tip of the iceberg. I think if you look below the surface level, there's going to be some skeletons and closets that are revealed that are going to shock a lot of people. But what I don't want people to be shocked about is this continued crap about how stealing signs is just, equal to the death penalty. That's not why this is going to be a very big deal. It's going to be a very big deal for one thing, and I think that you touched on it very lightly, is the money. That's what's going to be a big deal. The money coming into the program.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about these college football playoff rankings, which includes the Michigan Wolverines.